If you're watching this video, I assume you have seen H. Bomber Guy's video that sent all of this into motion, as well as probably looking into James Somerton yourself. If not, I will have Bomber Guy's video linked below. It is genuinely one of the greatest videos ever published on this website, and I can't help but recommend that you watch it. Please note that I will mainly be picking apart parts of the apology that focus on plagiarism and other parts of James's YouTube career. I will not be commenting on parts where he talks about his recent attempt, such as the beginning of the video. Above all else, I ask that you be respectful about that. Many people have the right to criticize James's genuinely shitty actions, but please know, if you somehow find a way, do not harass them. Also, if you or someone you know are dealing with these bad thoughts, please, I ask that you contact a hotline or seek support in some other way. I'll be leaving resources down below. You deserve love, and you do not deserve anything that you are currently going through. This video will be going over parts of James's apology that I found stuck out the most, and have something to say about. If there are any parts you felt I didn't talk about, then please comment them. If there's a substantial amount of information I have missed, I will either add it all to a pinned comment or the description. Basically, every part of the video discussed will have an accompanying timestamp if you wish to find them in James's video. At the time of recording, the video has been taken down, but there are still re-uploads of it online. While the point of this video is to showcase and give commentary on parts I deemed important from the original apology video, I of course recommend watching the video yourself, if you could find a re-upload of it, to come to your own thoughts and conclusions, as I have my own. Fair warning though, it is a long video, and there's a lot of awkward pauses. He says sorry for not crediting people. This is the first apology of many. At 2:50, he says that he thought, quote unquote, this video was based off of this person's research was enough. I don't know what academic role that James has lived in, but no, that isn't enough. If you're going to acknowledge that you're using other people's work, you're supposed to acknowledge when you're directly using someone's words, and not leave it up in the air and let us figure it out for ourselves. He does apologize for not knowing though, which is great, but it is incredibly odd that you didn't know it wasn't good enough in the first place. At 3:16, he says that there was a lot of times where stuff just got put in, and that there was no attempt at crediting anybody. Stuff was just put in your own video? Going up on the James Somerton channel? The stuff that people might be paying to see on Patreon? 46. He does say he isn't sorry for getting caught, but he's sorry for ever doing it, which is like a fine statement to make, but there are literal dozens of videos that he has made with plagiarized content. 5. He says he didn't realize he was hurting people. I don't know how old James is, but I'm pretty sure that if you've been in any classroom regardless of the subject in the past 20 years, you've at least had one teacher mention how bad plagiarism is, and how it can affect other people. As a wannabe journalist, this blew my fucking mind. At 4:47, he begins to talk about how this whole situation ruined his friendship with Nick. Nick isn't exactly innocent in the situation either, and may or may not have contributed to the multiple accounts of plagiarism. For the next minute or so, he goes into how long his friendship with Nick has lasted, going into them living together for about 7 years. He ends this little segment about Nick by saying that Nick hasn't spoken to him since the controversy started. At 6:19, he says sorry once again for the things he did, including copying people's work and not crediting them. In this one instance, he at least takes responsibility. He soon apologizes for spreading a lot of misinformation within the videos. If you haven't seen H. Bomber Guy's behemoth of a video that put all of this attention on James, you should know that there are quite a few instances of just wrong information being represented in his videos. There are some instances in where this happened because James changed words around to avoid being caught plagiarizing. At 6:52, he says he never intended for any of that stuff to happen, but then says in most cases he didn't write it. So he went from accepting responsibility to displacing responsibility. He says he realizes he's the face of the channel and should have done more fact-checking, but you're not just the face of a brand. You are representing yourself as the face of the work you are presenting. Before he was exposed, many people said that they loved James's writing, not knowing that his writing was the work of someone else. I haven't seen any accounts of it online, but I can only imagine someone may have referenced one of his videos in their own work, not knowing they accidentally referenced someone who plagiarized. He acknowledges that the plagiarism was stupid and how easy it was to look for all the things he stole from, but he may only be acknowledging that it's stupid now because he got caught. If he realized it was stupid before, he might have stopped. At 7:46, he thanks H-Bomber Guy and his team for starting a fund to give money back to the authors that were wronged. He didn't say authors that I wronged, just authors that were wronged. Here's a doozy though. At 8:23, he begins to talk about how people online were theorizing how much money he has made. He claims that the numbers online are very over-exaggerated. He also says that Nick and him split everything 50-50. While it can be hard to find out the exact amount of money someone can make from a YouTube video, he is pretending as if it isn't quite easy to see how much money he has made from Patreon alone. I don't even want to begin talking about James's spending habits, but in the comments of the original apology, YouTuber Folding Ideas talked about what equipment James has. James apparently has a Sony FX6 camera, which with one quick Google search showed me that the camera is around 8,000 Canadian dollars. He does talk about how expensive it is to live in Toronto, and while he is correct, doesn't explain why he would buy an $8,000 camera, nor does he explain why he is recording an apology on his phone. At 9:30, he says he wants to help contribute to the fund, and at the moment one of the ways he thinks he can do so is by making some of his videos public again and sending the ad revenue at the end of every month, or by starting a fund himself. And that what he can do is at the end of every month publicly show the AdSense and show how much money is going towards the writers he has stolen from. Which is nice. However, I personally fear that if that is to happen, he might use the obviously now lower AdSense number in an attempt to debunk people theorizing how much money he has made online. It is nice that he wants to find a way to financially contribute, though. At 11:13, he talks about finally crediting the writers he has stolen from in the videos he would re-upload, which is great, but then he immediately trips over himself by saying that he never thought that people would view him as a journalist? Like, dude, of course people would think you're a journalist who is posting their own work. At 12:02, he apologizes for a moment because his phone stopped the recording, meaning he is not recording this apology on his expensive equipment, but on his phone. At 12:40, he starts talking about some of his videos, which directly at the beginning state that his video is an adaptation of someone's book, which is a fucking weird statement to make. Watching the original H-Bomber Guy video and learning about all of James's videos, the constant thought going through my mind was, this guy is basically making audiobooks. Why doesn't he just make fan-made audiobooks? Except that wouldn't work, because in some videos he quote-unquote adapts to books, and he says that putting their names at the beginning of the video would be enough. I'm sorry, but that isn't. At 14:09, he talks about how he wants to do videos again, and just like some of the actual respectful people on Twitter are saying, I say don't. James, if you're watching this, unfortunately, you have ruined your credit online. Your work will never be trusted again. Even if you make content that isn't related to journalism, what you have done will never be washed away. He says he would love to become an example of how to give proper credit, but unfortunately your past will weigh that down. He says he wishes to have the chance to try again, but the thing is that James has had several opportunities to try, to start properly crediting. Again, he didn't plagiarize one or two times. There are actual dozens and dozens of accounts of him plagiarizing. He has had way too many opportunities to start properly crediting. At 16:13, he talks about criticism he has received about his remarks made towards other members of the queer community, notably women, ace people, and bi people, and he says that none of those remarks are true. And I do want to give James as much credit as I can, but it is weird as hell that in a video that is plagiarized to fuck, the one time you actually write something of your own, it's something that just shits on women. At 16:56, he promises that he didn't write any of that stuff, and that he doesn't think those things. If you didn't write it, then why would you say it? Why didn't you see any problem in what you were saying? At 17:27, he specifically apologizes towards asexual people. He says that his co-writer Nick is ace, and that he would just kind of roll with whatever Nick said. He also says that he's not trying to throw Nick under the bus or make him a fall guy, nor was Nick a scapegoat for James to make any bad remarks. As someone who is personally on the asexual spectrum, all I really have to say is, like, cringe, I guess. As a community, we're supposed to support and protect each other, and regardless of whoever wrote anything, it's still just as bad. At 19:22, he acknowledges that maybe he should have taken more time to create this response, which I can't help but agree with. I can only imagine the pressure James was feeling to respond, and again, I feel terrible for him, and I am glad he's still around. But he really should have just posted something on his community tab saying that he's collecting himself and is actually working on a proper response. Which he recently posted on his community tab, he is now doing, by the way. At 1935, he restates that he doesn't think the shitty things that has been said, nor does he think Nick does as well. But instead, this is a result of them half-assing and speeding through their quote-unquote work. Keep in mind, the two barely did any work. They were mostly copying and pasting other people's work, and then adding shitty remarks about other members of the queer communities themselves. At 20 minutes and 6 seconds, he begins to talk about other YouTubers supposedly lying about him, clarifying that H-Bomber Guy is not one of them, except for the remarks about Nick being a fall guy and James's film studio Telos being a scam, which it kinda is. He tries to say that Telos was never a scam for him and Nick to run away with money, but instead, there were issues behind the scenes which resulted in the falling out of one of their planned movies. He says in the next few days that there will be an update to the studio supporters, but if there were issues long ago, then you should have made a statement long ago, as to not make it seem like you completely abandoned it. At 22:29, he begins to talk about how people online were giving him shit about the movie's budgets being so low, but doesn't really talk about how people were concerned with how many movies he was attempting to make at once, or the poorly made posters that sometimes ripped off already existing posters, or how you were hiding old cancelled projects and then revealing that you're actually starting to make on new ones without any updates to the old ones. At 22:54, he continues again to talk about how he still wants to make new videos, saying that he knows people won't want to watch them, but he has had fun making them. I personally have also had fun looking over Wikipedia with friends on Discord. 23:15, he says that they ended up making a lot of videos they didn't want to make, and then blames people who asked James to cover certain subjects? What the fuck? Don't make the fucking video then! This goes back to an earlier point where I talked about how James thought that people didn't view him as a journalist. If he's listening to fan requests, that kind of disproves the point. If someone asks you to cover a certain subject, they view you as a journalist, someone that talks about things they are interested in, covering them, and providing information that they have researched. At 23:40, he talks about a video that he and Nick made that were released on Patreon, that not many people liked, leading to them to share it around. At 24:10, he talks about how the Patreon video might have hurt people and how he doesn't want that. I wish I could give James as much credit as I can. But you didn't want to hurt people. You didn't want to get found out that you were hurting people, or you didn't know that plagiarizing work hurt others. We both grew up in the Canadian education system, and I could fucking assure you that you were told the consequences of plagiarism in at least one class. At 24:25, he talks about how he'd love to do retrospectives on important queer movies, which honestly sounds like a great impactful idea, and he swears on his mother's grave that if he were to continue making new videos, that there would be no more copy and pasting, and that there would be proper crediting, and that he loved doing research. Again, this honestly sounds lovely, but the only research he's known for doing is stealing from others. He says that the lazy part of him was the part that was copying and pasting, but that he loved reading. And I believe him on that, but if you truly loved what you were reading, why couldn't you respect it? At 27:33, he begins to talk about his Patreon and how he's going to reactivate it. He says that the one reason he's doing this is because people were theorizing that he would reactivate the Patreon on January 1st. If you don't already know, Patreon subscriptions that renew every month renew on the 1st, meaning that if James did reactivate the Patreon on that day, anyone who is subscribed would get billed. So to give James a literal inch of credit, he's doing this so that way people can unsubscribe before they get billed. I saw a few things online about people thinking that him reactivating the Patreon meant that he would return to making videos like normal, but I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that this was just so that way people can unsubscribe if they want to. At 29:40, he begins to talk about all he has done in an attempt to make his channel a safe space for queer people on YouTube, talking about how he would delete hateful comments and how at some point he stopped receiving notification for replies to comments that were just leaving hate. At 30:26, he continues to apologize for the misinformation in his videos, whether it be historical information or things he didn't write. Again, I want to reiterate, I understand that you maybe didn't write some things, but you still said these things. You still read a script and didn't think twice about the shit you were saying. He ends the video apologizing to everyone once again. He thanks H-Bomber Guy and says he wants to do what he can to help contribute, saying he can upload what videos he can. Some videos he wouldn't be able to upload because sponsors have asked him to remain down, but even then he may be able to remove the sponsored segments from those videos. For my final closing thoughts, all I really have to say is, James, you have really fucked up, and for your sake, I say don't come back. You will most likely be eaten alive if you do make any proper attempt to come back. It's very clear that you weren't in the right headspace when you made this apology video, and if you are still choosing to make a new one, then I hope it is much more thorough and much more of an actual concise apology. But after that, I can't help but recommend you stay offline. You had so many opportunities to change, and unfortunately, you have squandered all of them. And because of what you or what Nick have done, both of you will be known in internet history as two of the most massive plagiarists. You may unfortunately never find work in journalism again. And for any of you who's watching this, I can't help but recommend checking out the playlist made by H Bomber Guy's producer Kat, showcasing multiple queer content creators, in case if you ever feel like you need to have your voice heard. Take care all, and stay safe.